The nightmare came in the scent of burning sage and the sound of gold coins falling like hail. 8-year-old Eli Barrett crouched behind his father's oak desk, watching Samuel Barrett count railroad money by lamplight. Each coin clinked against the others with the sound of church bells tolling for the dead. Progress demands, blood boy. His father's voice cut through the desert wind, rattling their cabin windows. Apache families cleared from survey routes. Troublesome editors silenced. Federal marshals who asked too many questions, permanently discouraged. Samuel's pen scratched across ledger pages, documenting each payment with accountant's precision. $50 per scalp, $100 for a family, $200 if they fought back. The pen stopped. Samuel looked up, his eyes finding Eli's hiding place with predatory certainty. Someday, this will all be yours, son. The gold, the secrets, the power to make men disappear. Eli jerked awake in Ash Hollow's pre-dawn silence, 25 years of guilt crushing his chest like a boulder. The leather pouch beneath his bedroll contained $3,000 in railroad gold blood money that had purchased the deaths of 17 Apache families, 6 federal marshals, and 1 honest newspaper editor named Thomas Whitmore. The town stirred around him with wrong sounds. Too many boots on wooden planks, too many men moving with purpose before sunrise. Eli rolled from his blanket behind Murphy's livery hand, checking the worn grip of his Colt .45. 6 men had tried to claim the bounty on his head. 6 men had learned why Eli Barrett was still breathing. Barrett. The voice cracked like a bullwhip across Main Street. Time to settle accounts. Jed Price stood in the street's center, black coat hanging open to reveal twin Colts worn low on his hips. Behind him, 5 gunmen formed a death-dealing semicircle. Buck Morrison, with his knife-scarred face and twitching trigger finger, Cleet Rawlings, cradling a sawed-off shotgun, and 3 others, whose names Eli didn't know, but whose intentions blazed clear as noon's sun. Price had been different once. Eli remembered stories from before the war. Price, as a young deputy, honest and idealistic, working to bring law to the frontier. But railroad money corrupted everything it touched, turning good men into monsters and monsters into kings. Price. Eli stepped into view, voice steady despite adrenaline singing through his veins. Early for social calls. Social time's over. Price gestured toward the crowd, gathering around a makeshift platform at the street's far end. Got business needs conducting. Thought you might be interested in today's merchandise. Through the crowd, Eli glimpsed a young woman in torn calico iron shackles binding her wrists. Even at distance, her posture radiated defiance, spine, straight chin, raised eyes blazing with intelligence that would get her killed in a place like this. Anna Whitmore. Price continued conversationally. Thomas Whitmore's daughter. Pretty thing, educated too. Daddy died owing considerable money to my organization. That's not law, Price. That's slavery. Call it what you want. Territorial judge says debts transfer to next of kin. Price's smile showed too many teeth. Course, if someone wanted to make a charitable donation. Eli studied Price's face, reading calculation behind pale eyes. This wasn't random. Price knew about the railroad. Gold knew about Eli's true identity. Question was how much he knew and what he planned to do with it. Why would I buy trouble I don't need? Price's laugh sounded like glass grinding under boot heels. Maybe because that girl's daddy was mighty curious about railroad business. Same kind of curiosity that got your father killed 3 years back. The words hit like physical blows. Thomas Whitmore had been investigating railroad corruption before his murder. If Anna possessed her father's files, his evidence. Auction starts in 5 minutes, Price said, turning away. Hope you brought enough gold, Barrett. Competition's gonna be fierce. Eli pushed through the growing crowd, his attention fixed on the woman who stood chained like livestock at market. Anna Whitmore looked 19 with ink-black hair, catching morning light, and eyes that burned with her father's stubborn courage. She wasn't crying or begging, she was memorizing faces, cataloging every man who participated in this mockery of law for a reckoning that hadn't come yet. Her dress bore Morrison's fingerprints and purple bruises on her arms, but she stood unbowed. Eli had read Thomas Whitmore's newspaper, respected the man's willingness to ask dangerous questions about territorial politics and railroad expansion. "But ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's voice cut through desert air. "Fine piece of merchandise this morning, young, strong, educated, perfect for whatever duties the buyer requires." Anna's jaw tightened at the crude suggestion, but she maintained silence. Behind her intelligent eyes, wheels turned someone planning escape rather than surrender. Opening bid $50. $75. A gap-toothed prospector waved his hat. $100. Morrison's voice carried ugly promise, his scarred face twisted with hunger that made decent men sick. Bidding climbed steadily, each increase drawing jeers and crude commentary. Eli watched with building rage, hand tight on the pouch containing his inheritance of guilt. $3,000 in gold, enough to buy Anna's freedom and start fresh somewhere beyond Price's reach. But using that money meant accepting his father's crimes, claiming ownership of blood that could never wash clean. The gold came from skimmed construction budgets funds, meant for legitimate workers who died building railroad dreams for other men's profit. $200. Morrison's bid drew appreciative whistles. Anna's gaze found Eli's across the crowd, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, or desperate hope from someone with no other options. She possessed the same dangerous intelligence that had gotten her father killed. Behind the crowd, Eli noticed familiar faces: old Pete from the livery stable, Sarah from the general store, Doc Hendricks with his black bag. Townspeople who'd known Thomas Whitmore, who'd read his newspaper, who now watched his daughters sold like cattle without lifting a finger. Only Pete met Eli's eyes, offering an almost imperceptible nod. The old hostler had helped Eli before providing information about Price's movements, warning him when bounty hunters came asking questions. In a town bought and paid for by railroad money, Pete Murphy was one of the few honest men left. Going once, the auctioneer called. Time balanced on a knife's edge. Walk away, and Anna Whitmore would disappear into Morrison's care, her fate sealed by her father's dedication to truth. Stay, and Eli would commit himself to a path that could only end in blood. $300. The words escaped before he could stop them, cutting through crowd noise like gunfire. Heads turned, voices stilled, even desert winds seemed to pause. Morrison's scarred face contorted with rage. What the hell? $300. Eli repeated, stepping forward with the leather pouch held high. Gold. The crowd surged closer, drawn by promise of real money. Price appeared at the platform's edge, pale eyes studying Eli with renewed interest. Considerable sum for a drifter, Price observed. Makes a man wonder about your good fortune. Honest work. Is it? Price's smile sharpened. Funny thing about honest work, don't usually pay in railroad gold. The accusation hung like gun smoke. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, sensing drama that would be discussed for years. Anna watched with careful attention, quick mind grasping dangerous currents beneath surface civility. Going once, the auctioneer called uncertainly. Morrison pushed forward, hand on gun butt. I want to see that gold. Easy, Buck. Price raised a restraining hand. Let the man bid. After all, who are we to question Providence? Anna's fingers found the iron shackle's weak point, a pin loosened by constant movement against her wrists. Her father had taught her that opportunity came to those who prepared for it, who watched for the moment when enemies revealed themselves. Going twice, she caught Eli's eye, nodding almost imperceptibly toward Morrison's position. The scarred gunman had shifted weight to his left foot, favoring an old wound that still pained him. If she could reach his knife. Sold. The gavel fell like judgment. Eli stepped forward to claim his purchase, heart hammering against ribs like caged thunder. The shackles came off with metallic scraping, leaving red welts on Anna's wrists. "Much obliged," she said quietly, voice carrying educated diction that marked her as dangerous in a town preferring women silent. "Don't thank me yet," Eli murmured. "We're not clear." Price approached with predatory grace, men positioning themselves to block exits. The crowd began dispersing, but several figures lingered at strategic points. This had been orchestrated, a trap, baited with Anna's suffering. "Mighty generous," Price said conversationally. 300 for a complete stranger. Makes a man curious about motivations. Before Eli could respond, Anna stepped between them, chin raised defiantly. "Whatever his reasons, he showed more decency than you've managed in your entire worthless life." Morrison's hand dropped to his gun. "Girls got a mouth. Girls got eyes." Anna's voice cut like broken glass. "I see exactly what you are." The confrontation stretched taut as bowstring. Townspeople watched from doorways, afraid to interfere, but unable to look away. "Here's what happens next," Price said, voice dropping to deadly whisper. "You and your purchase walk to my saloon. We discuss your daddy's business interests, the gold he stole, records he kept, arrangements we might make for continued breathing. And if I refuse, Sheriff Rourke arrests you for robbery. Girl gets sold again, this time to Buck." Morrison's grin stretched scars into grotesque patterns. "I'll take real good care of her." Anna's hand slipped into Eli's fingers, intertwining with surprising strength. "Whatever you decide, we face it together." Eli cataloged exits and obstacles. The saloon was Price's killing ground, where too many honest men had entered and never emerged. But the alternative meant watching Anna disappear into Morrison's hands. "One drink," Eli said. "Then we leave town." "Oh, I don't think you'll be leaving," Price replied, gesturing toward the broken wheel. "I think we're going to be very close friends." As they walked toward the saloon, Anna whispered urgently, "The livery stable owner, Pete Murphy. He was signaling you during the auction." Eli nodded grimly. If trouble came, Pete might be their only ally in a town owned by railroad corruption. The saloon doors swung shut behind them with coffin-lid finality. The broken wheel's interior reeked of tobacco smoke, spilled whiskey, and the metallic tang of old blood. Price's men had taken strategic positions with military precision Rawlings at the bar, two others flanking the stairs, Morrison by the back door. The arrangement spoke of long practice at intimidation and murder. Price gestured to a table centered perfectly for surrounding. Anna chose the wall-backed chair, forcing Eli to sit where he could watch the front door. Smart, she understood tactics better than most seasoned fighters. "Drink." Price poured whiskey from a bottle that looked like it had survived several wars. "We're fine," Eli replied. "I insist." Price pushed glasses across scarred wood. "Considerable investment in my town makes you noteworthy." Anna surprised them by taking a sip, face impassive despite the rotgut burn. Another small defiance that didn't escape notice. "Smart girl," Price observed. "Knows when to be sociable. Your daddy raised you proper." "My father raised me to recognize the difference between civilization and savagery," Anna replied coolly. Morrison chuckled from his position. "Got fire, this one." "Fire's useful," Price mused, studying Anna with predatory interest. "Also dangerous. Your daddy learned that hard way." Anna's knuckles whitened around her glass. "My father was murdered by cowards too weak to face truth." "Truth." Price tasted the word like something bitter. "Dangerous commodity. Gets people killed. Not as dangerous as lies," Anna shot back. "Lies catch up eventually." Price's smile sharpened. "We'll see." He turned to Eli, leaning back with calculated ease. "Now about your daddy's business ventures. Railroad inspection paid well in those days. Honest work." "Honest." Price's laugh carried genuine amusement. "Samuel Barrett was many things. but honest ain't one. See, I knew your daddy boy. Did business regular like. Man had talent for looking away when survey crews needed assistance with stubborn locals. Cold settled in Eli's stomach. You're lying. Price reached into his coat, withdrawing a small leather notebook yellowed with age. Recognize this, your daddy's handwriting, documenting every payment, every favor, every blind eye turned for railroad gold. Anna leaned forward, sharp eyes focusing on the notebook. What kind of payments? Price flipped pages theatrically. Apache families relocated from survey routes. Troublesome editors silenced. Federal marshals asking too many questions. Permanently discouraged. He looked up with mock sympathy. Your daddy was thorough. Kept detailed records of every murder he facilitated. That's not. Eli began, but words died seeing his father's unmistakable script. Was March 15th, 1883. Price read aloud. Thomas Whitmore, newspaper editor. $50 for permanent problem resolution. He closed the notebook with soft finality. Your daddy ordered the hit on her father boy. Anna's face drained of color, but her voice remained steady. You're lying. Wish I was, darling. Would make this considerably less complicated. Price tucked the notebook away. When Samuel Barrett got himself killed trying to expose his partners, he left interesting problems. Evidence that could hang half the territorial government. Gold belonging to very powerful people. And a son who might know where both are hidden. Eli's mind reeled. His father hadn't been the reluctant accomplice. He'd imagined Samuel Barrett had been an active participant in systematic murder, willingly partnering in genocide disguised as progress. The gold you spent this morning. Price continued. That's pocket change compared to what's really at stake. Your daddy stole construction funds, federal appropriations, territorial development grants. Enough money to buy a small army. I don't know anything about. Of course you do. Price's voice hardened. You've been carrying his guilt 3 years along with whatever evidence he gathered as insurance. Question is, where you hiding it? Anna studied Eli's face, reading truth in his expression with intelligent eyes. She was assembling pieces, understanding the conspiracy's depth. The real question, she said quietly, is why you need us alive to find it. If you know about evidence, why not torture the location out of him? Price's smile turned predatory. Because darling, evidence isn't just about local corruption. Reaches all the way to territorial capital, maybe further. Names, dates, methods, everything needed to bring down the entire network. But that kind of information's dangerous to handle. One wrong move destroys handlers along with targets. So you need someone expendable to retrieve it, Anna concluded. Someone you can eliminate after they serve their purpose. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good, just like Daddy. From his corner, Morrison spoke up. Why don't we just beat it out of him, save time and trouble? Because, Price replied patiently, location might be protected. Booby-trapped, coded, hidden in ways requiring specific knowledge to access safely. Kill him too quick, lose everything. Anna looked at Eli, expression mixing sympathy with calculation. What he's not telling you is this evidence could expose more than local corruption. It could reveal systematic murder reaching government and industry's highest levels. Exactly. Price raised his glass in mock salute. Which is why certain parties are very interested in making sure it disappears permanently, along with anyone who's read it. Understanding crystallized with sickening clarity. Samuel Barrett hadn't documented crimes for justice. He'd gathered leverage insurance against partners who might decide he knew too much. His murder hadn't been punishment for developing conscience. It had been preemptive strike to prevent blackmail. You killed him, Eli said bitterly. Not personally, but my organization handled the contract. Price finished his drink unhurriedly. Nothing personal, just business. The saloon's atmosphere grew thick as storm clouds. Anna's hand found Eli's, under the table, fingers interlacing with desperate strength. "Now here's what happens," Price continued. "You tell me where Daddy hid his insurance policy. Help me retrieve it careful-like. That might let you live long enough to regret it. And if I refuse, Buck gets to play with your lady friend while you watch. He's got creative ideas about entertainment." Morrison's grin split his scars grotesquely. "Looking forward to it." Anna's grip tightened, her voice carrying steel. "Some things are worth dying for." Her courage shamed Eli's fear. She was willing to endure torture rather than let Price claim evidence that could prevent future murders. "Evidence is hidden in the old Apache burial ground north of town," Eli said quietly. "Sealed in a metal box beneath a lightning-struck oak." Price's eyes blazed with greed. "How do we access it safely?" "Carefully. My father was paranoid about being followed. He set precautions." "What kind of precautions?" Eli met Anna's gaze, seeing understanding flicker. She recognized the lie he was constructing. "The kind that kill anyone approaching wrong," Eli replied. "Apache burial grounds aren't just sacred, they're protected. Disturb the wrong grave, might not live to regret it." Complete fabrication. But Price's superstitious nature was legendary. The man who ordered women and children murdered still crossed himself passing graveyards. "Apache spirits," Morrison scoffed uncertainly. "Not spirits, traps. My father learned from Apache scouts deadfalls, poisoned stakes, pits lined with sharpened bones. Burial grounds a maze of death for anyone not knowing the safe path." Price studied Eli's face, weighing truth against deception. "And you know this safe path. I'm the only one left who does." The lie hung like gun smoke. Around them, Price's men shifted restlessly, hands drifting toward weapons. "Interesting," Price mused. "But I have trust issues. Too many people tried lying their way out of difficult situations." "Then test it," Anna suggested with apparent innocence. "Send someone else first." Morrison's face paled. "Boss, I don't like—" "Relax, Buck." Price's laugh was winter cold. "I'm not sending anyone into Apache death traps. We're all going together. One big, happy family sharing risks and rewards." He stood, chair-scraping wood. "Boys, saddle horses. We're taking a ride to commune with the dear departed." As Price's men prepared for departure, Anna whispered urgently. "That was either brilliant or suicidal." "Both," Eli admitted. "But it bought time." "Time for what?" "To figure out how we survive what comes next." Outside, old Pete Murphy appeared at the saloon's window, catching Eli's eye briefly before vanishing. The hostler's weathered face had carried a message help was coming, but they needed to stay alive long enough to receive it. The Apache burial ground lay hidden in a canyon, where desert winds sang funeral songs through twisted stone. Eli had visited once as a child, brought by his father, to witness aftermath of a railroad survey expedition that left 17 Apache dead among ancient graves. The memory haunted his dreams, small bodies arranged like broken dolls, sacred burial scaffolds torn down, and trampled his father, standing over carnage with cold satisfaction while counting railroad gold. Now riding toward that cursed ground with Price's gun at his back and Anna's life hanging in balance, Eli felt inherited sin's weight pressing down like millstones. Every choice Samuel Barrett made, every life destroyed, had led to this reckoning. Price rode beside them, pale eyes constantly scanning for threats or opportunities. Behind them, Morrison and 3 gunmen formed loose escort weapons ready for trouble from any direction. "Tell me about these traps," Price said conversationally. "Pressure plates connected to deadfalls," Eli replied, building on his lie with desperate creativity. "Concealed pits lined with sharpened stakes, wire snares that take a man's head clean off. And you know how to avoid all this. Father made me memorize the safe path." Said it might save my life someday. That part was true, though. Samuel Barrett's path led to hidden gold caches, not burial grounds. Anna rode silently, intelligent eyes, studying landscape with careful attention. She was planning something, waiting for the right moment. Her father had raised her to think strategically, find opportunity in desperate circumstances. The burial ground appeared ahead like fever dream vision. Ancient stone markers stood sentinel among wind-carved rocks, Apache symbols weathered but visible. Prayer bundles hung from wooden scaffolds, offerings to spirits demanding justice for unavenged dead. Jesus! Morrison whispered, face pale with superstitious dread. Place gives me crawls. Just rocks and bones. Price said, but his voice lacked conviction. Lead on, Barrett. Eli dismounted, boots crunching on ground sacred, long before white men brought greed and violence to desert. Apache had buried their dead here for generations, believing the canyon's unique acoustics carried prayers directly to spirit world. Now it would serve as battleground between truth and corruption. Stay close. Eli told the group, leading them between stone markers with exaggerated caution. Step exactly where I step. Apache, who built these defenses, were masters of concealment. He led deeper into burial ground, weaving between graves and prayer scaffolds with theatrical precision. Behind him, Price's men followed nervously, confidence eroded by sacred atmosphere and warnings about hidden death. Are here, Eli said, finally stopping beside a lightning-struck oak dominating the canyon's center. Evidence is buried beneath this tree. Price studied the ancient oak with calculating eyes. Looks peaceful enough. Looks deceive. Father said Apache shamans blessed this tree specifically to protect secrets. Disturb it wrong, and you join spirits permanently. Morrison shifted nervously. Boss, maybe you should shut up and dig. Price snapped. Barrett, you're going first. If there are traps, you'll spring them. Eli had expected this. He knelt beside massive roots, running hands through sandy soil with apparent expertise. But his fingers found something unexpected, metal buried shallow beneath the oak. His father really had hidden something here. They need a shovel, Eli said carefully. Can't risk hitting trigger mechanisms with bare hands. One of Price's men produced an entrenching tool. Eli took it carefully, beginning to dig with genuine caution now. Whatever Samuel Barrett had buried here, it wasn't gold. 3 feet down, the shovel struck something solid. Eli cleared dirt away, revealing a metal strongbox sealed with wax and wrapped in oilskin. His hands trembled as he lifted it from the earth. Well, well, Price breathed. Looks like Daddy really did leave insurance. But as Eli opened the box, his face went white. Inside weren't ledgers or evidence, just a single letter addressed to him in his father's handwriting, and beneath it a photograph that made his blood turn to ice. The photograph showed Samuel Barrett shaking hands with a younger Jed Price, both men smiling beside a pile of Apache scalps. On the back, someone had written, Progress Partnership, 1878. Anna saw his expression change. What is it? With shaking hands, Eli unfolded the letter. His father's familiar script danced before his eyes. Son, if you're reading this, they've killed me for knowing too much. The evidence you seek isn't here, it never was. I buried this to protect you from truth you couldn't handle. Jed Price isn't my enemy. He's my protege. I taught him everything he knows about murder for money. The corruption you think you understand barely scratches the surface. The real conspiracy reaches Washington itself. Trust no one. Run while you can. Your father who loved you enough to lie. The letter slipped from nerveless fingers. Price picked it up, read it quickly, then began laughing, a sound like glass grinding under boot heels. Outstanding, Price gasped. Absolutely outstanding. You never knew, did you, boy? Your daddy didn't just order murders, he trained the next generation to carry on his work. Anna was staring at the photograph, her face carved from stone. This is dated 5 years before my father's murder. You've been planning this for decades. Price confirmed, wiping tears from his eyes. Samuel Barrett was the best teacher a young man could ask for. Showed me how to organize corruption, how to eliminate threats, how to make murder look like progress. Eli felt the world tilt sideways. Everything he'd believed about his father, about his own guilt, had been built on lies. Samuel Barrett hadn't been corrupted by the system he'd created it. The real evidence, Price continued, is scattered across a dozen hiding places from here to Denver. Samuel was too smart to put all his eggs in one basket. But this, he held up the letter. This tells me you really don't know where it is. Morrison had been listening with growing confusion. Boss, if he don't know nothing, and then he's useless. Price finished. Which means we can kill them both and move on to more productive endeavors. Price drew his gun with fluid grace, but Anna was already moving. She threw herself sideways, knocking Eli away from the tree just as the colt barked. The bullet carved bark where his head had been. "Run!" Anna shouted. They scattered as Price's men opened fire bullets, whining through sacred air and chipping ancient stone. Eli pulled Anna behind a burial scaffold, their cover thin against concentrated firepower. "This way." Anna pointed toward a gap in the rocks. "There's a path, I saw it while we were riding in." They darted between stone markers as gunfire erupted behind them. Morrison's scarred voice rose above the shooting. "Don't let them reach the rocks." But Anna had judged correctly. The gap led to a narrow passage between canyon walls, barely wide enough for a person. They squeezed through as bullets sparked off stone behind them. The passage opened into a smaller canyon, where ancient pictographs covered the walls. Anna studied them quickly, her educated mind working through possibilities. "These tell a story," she said breathlessly. "Apache warriors, railroad men, a great battle." Anna. Eli interrupted. "We need to keep moving." But she was already pointing to specific symbols. "Look, these aren't just decorative. They're directions, instructions for..." Her eyes widened. "They're trap locations. Real ones." From the passage behind them came sounds of pursuit boots on stone curse words echoing off canyon walls. Price's men had found their trail. The Apache really did protect this place. Anna continued urgently. But not with spirits, with engineering. She led him deeper into the pictograph canyon, following symbols that seemed to dance in afternoon light. Behind them, Morrison's voice grew closer. "Found their trail this way?" Anna stopped before a section of wall covered in particularly intricate drawings. Her fingers traced symbols, reading them like text. "Here," she whispered. "This is what we need." The symbols showed warriors triggering a rockfall that sealed the canyon entrance. Below the pictographs, almost hidden in shadow, was a series of small holes in the rock face. "Pressure points," Anna explained. "Push them in the right sequence." Her hands worked across the holes, following the pictograph pattern. Deep rumbling shook the canyon. Dust rained from above as ancient mechanisms engaged stones, grinding against stones in patterns set centuries ago. "What did you do?" Eli asked. "Gave us fighting chance." The rumbling grew louder, approaching from the canyon entrance. Price's men had walked into the trap, but their shouts suggested they were still alive and very angry. "Boss." Morrison's voice carried panic. "Whole damn canyon's coming down." "Find another way around," Price shouted back. They can't have gone far. Anna was already moving, following pictographs deeper into the maze. "There's more," she said. "These drawings show multiple defensive positions. The Apache built this entire canyon system as a fortress. They climbed over fallen stones and squeezed through crevices, always following the ancient symbols. Behind them, sounds of pursuit faded as Price's men struggled with blocked passages and unstable rock. Finally, they emerged onto a high ledge overlooking the burial ground. Below, they could see their abandoned horses and the scattered gear from their interrupted excavation. "We need to reach those horses," Eli said. "Look first." Anna pointed to movement at the canyon's entrance. New riders were approaching men in federal uniforms, moving with military precision. At their head rode a tall figure Eli recognized from wanted posters, Deputy Marshal William Hayes, legendary for his relentless pursuit of railroad corruption. How did they know? Anna wondered. Old Pete, Eli realized. He must have gotten word to federal authorities. But even as hope flickered, Price appeared on a ledge across from them, his black coat torn and dusty, but his gun steady as stone. Interesting development. Price called across the canyon. Federal marshals arriving just when things get complicated. From the rocks around Price, his surviving men emerged: Morrison with a bloody gash on his forehead, Rawlings limping but functional, two others who'd managed to navigate the Apache defenses. Question is, Price continued, how do we know those marshals aren't part of my organization too? The words hit like ice water. Price was right. Corruption reached federal levels. Hayes might be honest, or he might be another bought man wearing a badge. Only one way to find out, Anna said grimly. She stood up on the ledge, making herself visible to the federal officers below. "Marshal Hayes," she called out. "Anna Whitmore, I have evidence of railroad corruption." Hayes looked up, his weathered face showing surprise at finding civilians in the burial ground. "Miss Whitmore, are you injured?" "Not yet," she replied. "But Jed Price and his men are up here with us. They murdered my father." Price's laugh echoed off canyon walls. "Very touching. But I'm afraid Marshal Hayes isn't here to rescue anyone." The federal officer drew his rifle, but instead of aiming at Price's position, he trained it on Anna and Eli. "You're under arrest for theft of federal property," Hayes called up. "Surrender immediately." Anna's face went white. "He's one of them." "Told you," Price said with satisfaction. "Corruption goes all the way to the top. Marshal Hayes has been on railroad payroll for years." But Anna was studying Hayes's position, the way he held his rifle, the positioning of his men. Something didn't feel right. "Wait," she said quietly to Eli. "Look at his deputies. They're not aiming at us. They're covering different approaches to the canyon." She was right. While Hayes had his rifle pointed upward, his men were watching the canyon entrance and side passages, as if expecting threats from multiple directions. "Marshal Hayes," Anna called again. "What evidence are you here to collect?" "Samuel Barrett's ledger," Hayes replied. "Documents stolen from federal railroad investigation." Anna and Eli exchanged glances. That wasn't the story Price had been telling. Either Hayes was lying, or there were layers to this conspiracy they hadn't understood. "The ledger's not here," Anna shouted back. Samuel Barrett buried a letter saying the real evidence is scattered across multiple locations. "On what letter?" Hayes called. Anna held up the paper they'd found in the strongbox. "Instructions to his son. Says the corruption reaches Washington itself." Hayes lowered his rifle slightly. "Read it aloud." As Anna began reading Samuel Barrett's letter, Price grew increasingly agitated. "Don't listen to her," he shouted. "She's lying, trying to save her own skin." But Hayes was listening intently, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When Anna finished, he turned toward Price's position. "Jed Price," Hayes called. "You're under arrest for murder, conspiracy, and treason against the United States." Price's response was immediate. He opened fire on Hayes's position, his men following suit. The canyon erupted with gunfire as federal marshals returned fire from cover. "And now what?" Eli asked, bullets whining overhead. Anna was studying the pictographs again, following symbols toward the canyon's back wall. "There," she pointed. "Emergency exit." The Apache always planned multiple escape routes. They crawled along the ledge as gunfire echoed below, reaching a section where ancient handholds had been carved into rock. The descent looked treacherous, but staying meant being caught between Price's men and federal marshals, who might or might not be honest. Halfway down the cliff face, Eli's handhold crumbled. He slipped, catching himself on an outcropping as rocks tumbled into the canyon below. The sound drew attention from the gunfight. "There." Morrison pointed upward. "They're trying to escape." Price swung his rifle toward them, but Anna was ready. She pulled a handful of loose stones from the cliff face, hurling them at Price's position with surprising accuracy. One caught Morrison in the temple, dropping him to his knees. "Keep climbing," she urged Eli. They reached the canyon floor as the gunfight intensified above. Hayes and his men had taken cover behind boulders, returning disciplined fire at Price's scattered positions. "This way." Anna led Eli toward their abandoned horses, but Price had anticipated the move. Rawlings appeared between them and their mounts, shotgun raised. "End of the line," Rawlings sneered. The shotgun boomed, but Eli had thrown himself sideways, tackling Anna out of the blast radius. Buckshot shredded the air where they'd been standing. Rawlings was reloading when the unexpected happened. Old Pete Murphy appeared behind him, a heavy wrench in his weathered hands. The blow caught Rawlings at the base of his skull, dropping him like a felled tree. "About time you kids showed up," Pete said calmly. "Been waiting here 20 minutes. "Pete," Anna gasped. "How did you—" "Figured you'd need your horses," the old hostler replied. "Also figured you might need this." He handed Anna a leather satchel. She recognized her father's document case, the one that had disappeared after his murder. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. "Your daddy gave it to me before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should get it to federal authorities he trusted." Pete explained quickly. "Been waiting 3 months for the right moment." Anna opened the satchel with trembling hands. Inside were documents, photographs, and a complete ledger in her father's handwriting. Real evidence of the railroad conspiracy, not the fabricated stories Price had been spreading. "This is it," she breathed. "Everything we need to expose the truth." The gunfight above was reaching its crescendo. Price's remaining men were pinned down by Hayes' superior position and training. But Price himself had vanished from the ledge, and that worried Eli more than continued fighting. "We need to get out of here," he said urgently. "Price isn't the type to go down fighting. He's planning something." Pete nodded toward the canyon entrance. "Horses are saddled and ready. Routes clear to the main road." They mounted quickly, Anna clutching her father's satchel like a lifeline. But as they reached the canyon mouth, Price emerged from concealment behind a boulder, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You think you've won?" He snarled, gun trained on Anna's chest. "You think one little ledger can bring down an empire?" "It's not just one ledger," Anna replied, her voice steady despite the weapon pointed at her heart. "It's the truth, and truth has a way of spreading." "Pretty words," Price sneered. "But dead girls don't spread anything." His finger tightened on the trigger, but the shot came from an unexpected direction. Red Hawk materialized from the rocks like a vengeful spirit, his rifle smoking. Price spun with the bullet's impact, his own shot going wide. "The Apache do not forget," Red Hawk said quietly, working the lever of his Winchester. 17 families, 52 dead. Justice comes slowly, but it comes. Price struggled to raise his gun again, but his strength was fading with his blood. This doesn't end it," he gasped. "They'll send others. The conspiracy goes deeper than you know." "Then we'll dig deeper," Anna said firmly. "We'll expose them all." Price's laugh was bitter as alkali water. You think Hayes is honest. He's been playing both sides for years. When you give him that evidence, you'll be signing your own death warrant." The words sent ice through Anna's veins. If Price was telling the truth, they were about to hand the evidence over to another corrupt marshal. "You're lying," Eli said, but uncertainty colored his voice. Am I? Price's breathing was growing labored. Ask him about the railroad pension fund. Ask him about the Apache relocation payments. Ask him. A final cough cut off his words. Jed Price died as he had lived with secrets on his lips and blood on his hands. Red Hawk approached the body, his weathered face showing no satisfaction in the kill. One debt paid. Many more remain. What did he mean about Hayes? Anna asked. Only one way to find out, Red Hawk replied. But we do it carefully. The Apache have learned not to trust white men's badges. Above them, the gunfire had stopped. Hayes and his men were descending into the canyon, their movements cautious but professional. The deputy marshal's face was grim as he surveyed the scene. Jed Price, he said, simply looking down at the body. Been hunting him for 3 years. He's dead, Anna said, still mounted and ready to flee if necessary. Shot trying to escape. Hayes nodded, then turned his attention to the satchel in Anna's hands. That the evidence you mentioned, your father's investigation, Anna hesitated, Price's dying words echoing in her mind. Hayes noticed her reluctance. Miss Whitmore, he said carefully, I know you have reasons not to trust federal authority. Too many badges have been bought and paid for. But I can give you proof of my intentions. He reached into his coat, moving slowly to avoid startling anyone. From an inner pocket, he withdrew a telegram and a photograph. Telegram from Washington, he explained. Authorization for a special investigation into railroad corruption, specifically mentioning your father's murder. And this, he held up the photograph. It showed a younger Hayes shaking hands with Thomas Whitmore in front of the newspaper office. Your father and I had been corresponding for months before his death. Hayes continued. He was gathering evidence for a federal case. I was gathering witnesses. We were supposed to meet the week he was killed. Anna studied the photograph, recognizing her father's handwriting on the back. Deputy Marshal Hayes, one of the few honest ones left. Trust him. T.W. Daddy knew you, she said slowly. He trusted me with his life, Hayes replied. I failed to protect him. I won't fail to seek justice for his death. Red Hawk had been listening to this exchange with careful attention. Words are easy, lawmen. Actions speak truth. Then judge me by my actions, Hayes said simply. He gestured to his men who were securing the scene and collecting evidence. I've been building a case against railroad corruption for 2 years. Your father's evidence is the final piece I need. Anna looked at Eli, then at Red Hawk, reading the same uncertainty in their faces. They had to trust someone, but trust had proven deadly too many times. If we give you this evidence, Anna said carefully, what guarantee do we have that it won't disappear into federal bureaucracy? You don't, Hayes admitted. But you have my word that copies will be made and distributed to multiple authorities, including newspaper editors in Denver, Santa Fe, and San Francisco. And the Apache, Red Hawk asked, what justice for my people? Full federal investigation into illegal land seizures and the murders of Apache families, Hayes promised. Reparations for survivors, and prosecution of every man who participated in the genocide. It was more than they dared hope for, but Anna still hesitated. Once she handed over her father's evidence, there would be no going back. No second chances if Hayes proved false. There's something else, she said finally. Price claimed you were on railroad payroll. Something about pension funds and relocation payments. Hayes's face darkened. He was half right. I've been taking railroad money for 18 months, but not as bribes. He pulled out another document, this one bearing official federal seals. Deep cover operation, authorized by the Attorney General himself. I've been posing as a corrupt marshal to infiltrate the railroad conspiracy from within. Anna read the document quickly, her journalist's eye catching the authentic details of federal authorization. It looked genuine, but forgeries were possible. "How do we know this is real?" she asked. "You don't," Hayes admitted again. "But ask yourself this: if I were truly corrupt, why would I be here with a full federal posse? Why not just let Price kill you and bury the evidence forever?" The logic was sound, but Anna had learned to distrust logic when lives were at stake. She looked at Eli, seeking his judgment. "Your call," Eli said quietly. "But we can't run forever. Eventually we have to trust someone." Anna took a deep breath and then extended the satchel toward Hayes. "My father's life's work. If you betray this trust, you'll answer to more than just us." Hayes accepted the satchel with the reverence of a man handling sacred relics. "Your father was a good man, Miss Whitmore. He deserves justice." "So do the Apache," Red Hawk added pointedly. "Ihal Kanal, so do the Apache." Hayes agreed. "This evidence will bring down the entire network. Judges, politicians, railroad executives, all of them." As Hayes and his men prepared to escort them back to Ash Hollow, Anna felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The immediate danger was over, but the larger fight was just beginning. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go to trial," Hayes replied, "and we let the truth speak for itself." But even as they rode toward town, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The desert held many secrets, and not all of them had been revealed. Behind them, the Apache burial ground returned to its eternal silence. But the spirits of the dead seemed to whisper warnings on the wind. Justice was coming, but so was retribution from those who had profited from murder and corruption. The real battle was just beginning. 6 weeks later, Anna Whitmore stood before a packed federal courthouse in Denver. Her father's evidence spread across tables like an indictment of an entire system. The trial of the railroad conspiracy had become the most significant legal proceeding in territorial history. Deputy Marshal Hayes had kept his word. The evidence had been copied and distributed to multiple authorities, newspapers, and reform organizations. The truth could no longer be suppressed or buried. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Anna said, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom, "my father died because he believed in justice. He believed that truth was more powerful than money, more enduring than corruption." In the gallery, Eli Barrett sat with Red Hawk, both men wearing the badges of federal deputies. The Apache war chief had been appointed as a special agent for tribal affairs, his testimony having proven crucial in exposing the genocide disguised as progress. "The evidence before you," Anna continued, documents 15 years of systematic murder. 17 Apache families eliminated to clear railroad survey routes. 6 federal marshals killed for investigating corruption. Local officials bought and paid for like cattle at auction. At the defendant's table, Territorial Judge Harrison Blackwood sat in shackles, his soft features pale with defeat. Beside him, railroad executives and corrupt politicians awaited their fate, their empire of greed crumbling around them. "But this trial isn't just about punishing the guilty," Anna said, her voice growing stronger. "It's about preventing future crimes. It's about ensuring that no other families suffer what mine suffered, what Red Hawk's people suffered." The jury listened intently, their faces showing the weight of decision. These were honest men and women, farmers and merchants, who understood the difference between right and wrong. "Justice delayed is justice denied," Anna concluded. "My father's death must not be in vain. The truth must prevail." The deliberation took 2 days. When the jury returned, their verdict was unanimous guilty on all counts. The railroad conspiracy was finished, its leaders facing life in prison or execution. But as Anna left the courthouse, she noticed a familiar figure watching from across the street. A well-dressed man in an expensive suit, his face hidden by shadow. He observed her for a moment, then turned and walked away. The fight was over, But Anna Whitmore knew that somewhere in the shadows, new conspiracies were already forming. The price of freedom was eternal vigilance, and she intended to pay it. Her father's printing press had been moved to Denver, where it would continue telling the stories that needed to be told. The truth endured, as it always had, as it always would. And in the desert wind that howled through the mountains, the spirits of the dead finally found peace, knowing that justice had been served. The ledger of blood and gold was closed, but the book of truth remained open its pages, waiting to be filled with new stories of courage, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between right and wrong. Anna Whitmore had inherited more than her father's courage. She had inherited his mission to speak truth to power, regardless of the cost. The desert remembered everything and forgot nothing. Justice endured.